The boy sat in the middle of the marble hallway, building towers out of silence. Blocks scattered across the floor, red, blue, yellow. Yet not a single sound left his lips. He didn't look up when the maids passed, didn't flinch when footsteps echoed. Only his small hands moved, steady, careful, lost in their own world. Then came the new maid, Amara. She didn't speak right away. She didn't kneel or ask questions like the others. She just stood there, watching him. In her hands, she held a tray of silver spoons that rattled softly as she set them down. The boy froze. His eyes, for the first time, met someone's. And then he made a sound. Not a word, just a hum. Faint, fragile, like the first spark in a long dead fire. Amara blinked. Her heart pounded. No one had ever heard him make a sound before. She slowly knelt beside him and whispered, "Do you want to show me something?" The boy turned one block upside down, forming a perfect pattern, and with trembling fingers, he spelled something out that made Amara's breath catch in her throat. He wasn't silent. He was trying to speak, just in a different language. The mansion was the size of a hotel. Glass walls, echoing halls, and a silence so heavy it felt alive. Every morning began the same way. Servants whispering through corridors, cooks preparing meals no one ate, and a little boy, Ethan, sitting by the window, watching birds he never named. Ethan was 6 years old. He hadn't spoken a single word in his life. His doctors called it severe autism. His father called it a tragedy. Mr. Lancaster, the billionaire behind half the city's skyline, had spent millions on treatments, therapies, specialists flown in from Europe. But nothing worked. The boy remained trapped in his quiet world, unreachable, unresponsive. His mother, once a pianist, had left 2 years ago. The silence had broken her first. Since then, the mansion had become colder. Each maid who tried to help Ethan quit after a few days. "He doesn't look at you," they'd say. "He doesn't even know you're there." Then came Amara. She was quiet, too, a woman with deep brown skin and eyes that carried both exhaustion and empathy. She had worked in difficult homes before, caring for children others called hopeless. But something about this boy felt different. On her first morning, she noticed small details everyone else missed. The way Ethan tapped his fingers 3 times before moving a toy, the way he arranged his blocks in perfect symmetry, or how he hummed when sunlight hit the floor just right. It wasn't random, it was communication. When she mentioned it to the butler, he smiled politely. "We've seen it all before, Miss Amara. The boy doesn't understand the world." But that night, Amara sat outside Ethan's door, listening to that soft hum echoing again. And for the first time, she whispered to herself, "Maybe we're the ones who don't understand his world." She didn't know then that what she was about to discover, hidden in the boy's silence, would change everything. The next few days inside the Lancaster mansion felt different, not to anyone else, but to Amara. Every morning, she would find Ethan sitting by the same window, sunlight falling on his face, his fingers moving in rhythm with an invisible song. He never looked at her, never reached out. But she stayed, always a few feet away, watching, waiting, learning. She started to notice patterns. Ethan never built towers of random colors. His blocks followed a rhythm: red, blue, yellow, pause. Red, blue, yellow, pause. If she placed a block out of order, he would gently push it aside and start again, as if correcting her mistake. One evening, when the sun was fading, Amara softly whispered, "Ethan, may I try?" No response, but when she picked up a block and mimicked his pattern, she saw it. The faintest flicker of surprise in his eyes. He stopped, then placed a green block beside her pattern, breaking the sequence deliberately. Amara tilted her head. "Oh," she whispered, "you want to play together." It was the smallest breakthrough, but for a boy who hadn't connected with anyone in 6 years, it was monumental. Days turned into weeks. Amara adjusted her entire routine to Ethan's world. She spoke less, observed more. She played the same song on her phone every morning, and noticed that Ethan hummed along, just one note behind, as if echoing her emotion. She brought him colors he'd never used: orange, purple, white, and realized he arranged them not by hue, but by sound. Every color in his mind had a tone. Red was sharp like a bell. Blue was soft like rain. That night, Amara sat in her small servant's room, tears in her eyes. She scribbled notes furiously, every pattern, every reaction. "He's speaking," she wrote. Not with words, but with rhythm, light, and order. The next morning, when Mr. Lancaster came down for breakfast, Amara gathered her courage. "Sir," she said softly, "I think Ethan is trying to communicate. He's using patterns." The billionaire barely looked up from his newspaper. "Miss Amara, I've had neuroscientists, speech therapists, child behaviorists, you name it. My son doesn't understand language." Amara hesitated. "Maybe he understands it differently." Lancaster sighed, lowering his coffee cup. "You're kind, Miss Amara, but hope can be cruel. I've lived with it long enough." He left, but Amara didn't give up. That evening, while cleaning Ethan's playroom, she found something extraordinary. Hidden under the edge of the rug were sheets of paper. Dozens of them, each one covered with strange, repetitive drawings. Spirals, dots, and lines. At first glance, they looked meaningless, but then she noticed every line matched a rhythm she'd heard him hum. She took one sheet, placed it beside her phone, and played the melody he loved most, a gentle piano tune. To her astonishment, the dots and spirals aligned perfectly with the beat. Her heart pounded. "Ethan," she whispered, turning to him, "is this music?" The boy blinked, then reached out, his hand trembling slightly. He pointed to one of the sheets, then to the piano in the corner of the room. Amara rushed to it, her fingers trembling. She played the pattern exactly as he'd drawn, and Ethan gasped. Not loudly, just a tiny, sharp intake of breath, like recognition. He smiled. For the first time, Amara covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You've been writing music all this time," she whispered. "You've been speaking through notes." The next day, she brought in a small keyboard. Every time Ethan drew something, she'd try to play it, and it always matched the emotion he felt. Sad, happy, scared, curious. He expressed it all through these coded symphonies. Soon, the hums became clearer. Sometimes he'd stop her mid-note and tap the key he wanted. Slowly, painfully, he was learning to translate his inner world into sound. One evening, as she played a soft tune he'd written, he did something that froze her completely. He whispered, "Barely audible, Ma." Amara stopped playing. Her breath caught in her throat. "Ethan?" she said shakily. He looked at her, his eyes glassy, and whispered again, "Ma." It wasn't a random sound. It was intentional, the very first word of his life. And it wasn't to his mother, or his father, or a doctor. It was to her. Amara fell to her knees, sobbing. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling him close, but gently, afraid to break the moment. "You did it. You spoke." The boy smiled faintly, touching the piano key again, playing the soft note that matched his voice. It was as if he was saying, "See, I can talk. I just needed someone to listen differently." For days after, Amara tried to show Mr. Lancaster, but he refused to believe. "It's coincidence," he said coldly. "He mimics sounds, not words," so Amara devised a plan. She recorded Ethan's drawings, matched them with tunes, and played them for the family's doctor. After hours of comparison, the doctor stared at her in disbelief. "These are not random sounds. He's using musical syntax. He's literally writing messages in melody. The doctor's report shook the household, and when Mr. Lancaster finally saw his son hum in perfect rhythm, then whisper, "Ma," once again, his world shattered. He fell to his knees beside the boy, tears falling freely. "Ethan," he whispered, "my son, you've been speaking all along." Ethan just smiled, tapping his father's tie, then playing a soft note on the keyboard. The same note that meant love. Mr. Lancaster had spent his entire life conquering the world, not people. He knew how to negotiate contracts worth billions, but not the small, fragile language of love that his own son spoke. For years, he had built skyscrapers, but he had never built a bridge to his child. Now, standing in the center of that vast marble living room, he was watching Ethan, his little boy, sitting beside the piano with Amara, fingers dancing over the keys like tiny sparks of life. The air was thick with silence, yet alive with something sacred. Ethan tapped a rhythm. Amara followed. He changed it. She adapted. Together they made something new. A song that had no words, yet said everything. Mr. Lancaster couldn't move. His throat tightened. He whispered, "How long has this been happening?" Amara looked up, her voice trembling. "Since the day I arrived, sir. He's been trying to speak all along, just no one was listening." The billionaire's knees nearly buckled. He stepped forward slowly, as if approaching a fragile miracle. "My God," he murmured. "He wasn't broken." Amara shook her head, smiling through tears. "No, sir. He's brilliant. You see patterns. He feels them." Ethan turned, noticing his father. For a moment his gaze faltered, fear flickering behind his eyes. He had seen this man before, but only from a distance. A man in a suit, always moving, always commanding, never seeing. Mr. Lancaster swallowed hard. "Hi, buddy," he said softly. His voice cracked, something it hadn't done in years. "It's me, Dad." Ethan stared at him. No response, just quiet breathing. Then he pressed a single piano key, a low, trembling note. Amara recognized it, the sad tone. She placed a hand over Mr. Lancaster's arm. "He's afraid, sir. Don't speak. Listen." So he did. For the first time in his life, the billionaire stayed silent. Ethan tapped a rhythm on the piano. 1, 2, 3, pause. Then again, the same sequence. Amara's eyes widened. "It's the pattern he uses for questions," she whispered. Mr. Lancaster's breath caught. "He's asking me something?" Amara nodded. "He wants to know if you hear him." The billionaire's eyes filled with tears. He slowly stepped forward, knelt beside the piano, and pressed his finger on the same key, matching the rhythm exactly. 1, 2, 3, pause. Ethan froze. His tiny lips parted slightly. And then, a sound. Not random, not a hum. A clear, small word. "Da." It wasn't perfect. It cracked halfway, but it was real. The sound of a child who had been waiting 6 years to be heard. Mr. Lancaster collapsed to his knees, a sob escaping his chest before he could stop it. "Yes, son," he whispered, voice trembling. "Yes, I hear you." Amara turned away, tears streaming freely now. The air felt holy, as if something divine had just entered the room. Ethan reached out, slow, uncertain, and touched his father's face. His small hand brushed the tears. Then, softly, he played another tune. Short, warm, rising gently at the end. Amara gasped. "He's saying something," she whispered. "That's his pattern for happy." Mr. Lancaster could barely breathe. "You're happy?" The boy nodded, once, firm. For a long time no one spoke. Only the sound of the piano, the boy's voice, filling every corner of that house that had been silent for far too long. That night, Mr. Lancaster asked Amara to stay. They sat together in his office, surrounded by files, medical reports, and half-finished plans. He looked at her and said, "All my life, I thought I could fix anything with money. But what my son needed wasn't a doctor. It was a listener." Amara smiled faintly. "Sometimes, sir, the most powerful thing you can do for someone is believe in the sound they make, even when you don't understand it yet." He nodded, his gaze distant. "You've done what no one else could. Tell me, how did you know?" Amara looked down, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "Because I was like him once. Everyone thought I was mute too, but I was just afraid. Someone finally waited long enough for me to speak. I promised myself I'd do the same for another child someday." Lancaster's throat tightened again. "You kept that promise," he said softly. She smiled. He kept his too. A week later, the house had changed. Laughter, small, imperfect laughter, began echoing in rooms that had forgotten warmth. Ethan spent his mornings with Amara at the piano, composing melodies that expressed things he still couldn't say. His father would join them, awkwardly pressing the wrong keys, making them both giggle. One afternoon, while they played, Ethan handed Amara a small piece of paper. A new drawing. This one was different. The spirals and lines formed shapes that looked like letters. She squinted, then gasped. It wasn't music. It was words. On that crumpled page, in uneven letters, were 4 words that made her heart stop. "Thank you for hearing." Her tears came before she could even blink. She looked at Ethan, who smiled shyly, then pressed a soft note, the love tone. When she turned, Mr. Lancaster was standing in the doorway, silent, motionless. He had seen it too. His eyes glistened. Slowly, he walked over, knelt beside his son, and whispered, "You've given me more than all the buildings I've ever made." Ethan leaned forward and hugged him. The first hug in years. The piano hummed gently as his elbow brushed the keys, turning that embrace into sound. One long, beautiful note that filled the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. Amara stood there, her heart full, realizing that she hadn't just helped a boy find his voice. She had helped a father rediscover his own heart. That night, the billionaire sat alone in his study, staring at the city skyline. He reached for his phone, called the research center that had treated Ethan for years, and said quietly, "You were wrong. My son doesn't need to be cured. He needs to be heard." Then he looked down at the piano keys where Ethan's last drawing lay, smiled faintly and whispered to himself, "Maybe love was the only language I never learned." And in the next room, Ethan played a soft lullaby, a tune Amara recognized instantly. It was called Home. Months passed, and the Lancaster mansion no longer felt like a museum of silence. It felt alive. Curtains that once stayed closed now fluttered with wind. The piano, once covered in dust, sang every morning. Notes of discovery, laughter, and something deeper. Connection. Amara had become more than a maid. She was part of the family now, though she never asked for it, never expected it. She still wore her simple uniform, still worked tirelessly. But Ethan's small hand holding hers in the hallway was worth more than any title or paycheck. Every afternoon, she and Ethan would sit by the garden window. He still didn't talk much. Words were hard for him, but he didn't need to. The sounds he made, the gentle tunes he played, the way his eyes glowed when he understood something, they were louder than speech. One spring morning, Mr. Lancaster invited a few guests. Reporters, teachers, doctors, and child specialists. He didn't tell Amara why. When they gathered in the main hall, he stood in front of them, his son beside him, and said softly, "For 6 years, I thought my boy was silent, but it was the world that refused to listen. Today, I want you to hear him." He nodded to Amara. She sat at the piano with Ethan, heart pounding. Together, they played one of his melodies. the one she'd first discovered in his drawings. The notes rose, fell, and danced like whispers of emotion. The audience was silent, some already in tears. Then Ethan pressed a key. One note that Amara recognized instantly. The speak tone. She stopped playing. The boy turned to the crowd, his lips trembling, his little voice barely above a whisper. "Hi," he said. The hall fell utterly still. Then came gasps, sobs, and applause that echoed through the house like thunder. Mr. Lancaster covered his face, shaking with emotion, while Amara just wept quietly. Proud, grateful, overwhelmed. That moment changed everything. The Lancaster Foundation soon launched a new project, the Silent Voices Initiative. It funded programs for autistic children across the country, teaching parents and teachers to listen differently. Amara became the program's first counselor, though she never called herself that. "I'm just someone who waited long enough," she would say with a smile. Ethan began to travel with his father, performing his small piano pieces for other children. He still didn't talk much, but he didn't have to. His music spoke for him, and for millions like him. One evening, after a long day, Amara stood in the empty music room, sunlight turning gold through the glass. She touched the piano keys gently, playing the melody Ethan had named Home. Behind her, Mr. Lancaster's voice broke the silence. "You changed us," he said softly. Amara turned, smiling. "No, sir. Your son did." He looked toward the piano where Ethan's sheet music lay scattered, each page filled with sound and meaning. "I used to think wealth was measured in numbers," he whispered. "Now I know it's in moments like these." Amara nodded, her eyes glistening. "And in people who dare to listen." Outside, laughter echoed. Ethan's laughter, pure and free. Amara closed her eyes, letting that sound wash over her. For the first time in years, the mansion didn't just have light. It had life.